glad you're joining me today. Thank you. We've got a great show for you about our oceans and how we can take action for ambitious ocean protections. But before we dive into our topic, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the brutal killing of Tyree Nichols by the police and the outpouring of grief, horror, and anger that many of us are feeling. The unrelenting police violence targeting Black and brown people has got to stop. In 2020, we saw the unprecedented uprising in the wake of George Floyd's murder and a dramatic shift in public opinion in support of the movement for Black lives. And there were promises of change, weren't there? But the killings haven't stopped. In 2022, it was the deadliest year on record for police violence in the US. And now is the time for accountability and pushing for real, humane solutions for our communities. And I urge you, please learn more at, now get this, M4, the number 4, BL.org, Movement for Black Lives, M, the number 4, BL.org. This past Wednesday was the start of Black History Month, which is an important reminder for white people like me to stop, learn, and listen. Listen, we all have a role to play. And the more we learn how to be better and stronger allies, that stand with the Black community, and the more we do that, the better we can show up as part of the solution. Taking steps towards anti-racism is critical in building the big movement that we need for a green, just, and peaceful world going forward. Because we know that to win, it's going to take all of us working together. As we get into our topic for today on protecting our oceans, let's start with a little good news, okay? We need a little good news. England recently banned single-use plastic items like cutlery and plates, styrofoam food containers, and this is a really important big step towards phasing out single-use plastics, which pollute our environment for hundreds of years. This stuff doesn't degrade. It pollutes everything for centuries, especially our oceans. I mean, think about that. We take oil out of the ground that took millions of years to form. Then we lace it with a bunch of powerful toxic chemicals to create a product that's used for maybe a few minutes, only to be thrown away to pollute the environment for hundreds of years to come. I mean, it's crazy, really. Think about it. We're killing ourselves to make a few rich corporate executives even richer. We've just gotten used to it because culturally it's the water we swim in, but now it's literally in the water we're swimming in. We've put so much plastic into the environment that it's in our food, our air, and water. There's even plastic in our blood and in a woman's breast milk. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's terrifying. But steps like England just took give me hope that we can get back to sanity on this issue. It's also been really encouraging to see governments start to speak out against deep sea mining. You've heard about that. A handful of companies are trying to get approval to start mining the floor of the sea this year, which is obviously a bad idea that it sounds like it could be a plot for a new Godzilla movie. The deep sea is the most pristine ecosystem on the planet. And it absorbs carbon. It's a natural sink for carbon. So it's been wonderful to see opposition led by Pacific Island nations like Palau, Fiji, Samoa, and Micronesia, calling for an international moratorium on the practice. I mean, we don't even know all what's down there. We haven't even discovered half of what's down there. Great mysteries that have to be protected. More and more countries have been piling on to the call to stop and prevent deep sea mining, adding to a kind of momentum that we need as we approach decision points later this year. Just the other day, the French Parliament voted to ban deep sea mining in its waters. Yay. Vive la France. If we keep pushing together, we can stop deep sea mining before it starts. So let's dive more into our topic today and why protecting our oceans is so critical for all of us. You know, it's the ocean that keeps there's only one ocean, by the way, one huge ocean, although they have different names, but it's the ocean that keeps our blue planet livable, habitable, keeps us alive. About half of the oxygen that we breathe comes from our oceans, from phytoplankton. They provide livelihoods and sustenance for billions and billions of people. The health of our ocean is inextricably linked to our own health as humans. But climate breakdown, industrial overfishing, deep sea mining, and plastic pollution have driven the oceans and the creatures that live there into real crisis, which means that we're in crises. The oceans absorb about a fourth of the carbon pollution emitted from human activities like burning fossil fuels and deforestation. That leads to oceans acidification. It becomes more acidic. And that harms ocean creatures, especially our shelled friends, you know, the crustaceans like shrimp, crab, lobster, and krill, and disrupts entire marine food webs. At the same time, overfishing has led to the disappearance of 90% of large fish. Those magnificent, large, wild creatures are disappearing from the seas. And that also has massive ripple effects throughout the ecosystems. An estimated 8 million tons of plastic pollution enters our ocean each year that can get ingested by marine animals, leading to starvation, suffocation, and entanglement. And microplastics absorb pollutants and end up in our seafood, which then makes us sick too when we eat this stuff. And please, by the way, don't order big fish to eat, swordfish, and don't do it. And if you see that on a menu or octopus on a menu, complain. I go into the kitchen and complain to the chef. As I said before, our health and the health of our oceans are bound up together. The good news is we have a solution. The 30 by 30 treaty is a commitment to protect 30% of our planet's ocean by 2030. To achieve this, we need a strong global ocean treaty this year. A strong treaty would enable the creation of vast ocean sanctuaries on the high seas, protecting nature and the food security of billions of people, and giving the ocean hope. And there's reason to be hopeful that we can get there. There really is. Just this past December at the UN Biodiversity Conference, the world actually agreed to protect 30% of all land and oceans by 2030. It was a landmark decision that has implications for every person and every species on Earth. But this agreement didn't actually put in place the mechanisms that are needed to achieve the goal. And that's what we need to make sure gets done in just a few short weeks at what could be the very last global oceans treaty negotiations. That's why I will be there in New York later this month, where these negotiations are happening. I'm going to join forces with ocean lovers across the world to hold our leaders' feet to the fire and make sure they deliver a strong global oceans treaty, one that establishes ocean sanctuaries free from industrial exploitation, one that truly gives the ocean a chance to heal itself. Today, I'm so happy to have our trusty Fire Drilled Fridays ocean correspondent, John Hocevar, to give us all the ins and outs on what's happening and what we need to do to support a strong treaty. John has led Greenpeace USA's fight to keep oceans healthy for the past 19 years. He's a marine biologist, a submarine pilot, and his work in Antarctica waters last year resulted in 7 new areas being closed to fishing. Now, let's take a look at a short video of John Hocevar and Dr. Suzanne Lockhart, who is a marine biologist from the California Academy of Sciences, as they discuss their work with the submersible in Antarctica and the need for large-scale ocean protection.
We're going deeper and deeper into the dark, cold depths of Antarctic waters, and I start to think about how long it's going to be before we reach the bottom. It can be 20 minutes, 25 minutes before we get down there, so it's like a very long, slow elevator ride down through the ocean. Usually about 20 feet off the bottom, we get our first glimpse of, an undiscovered world. And it could be anything. Most of the surface of our planet is ocean.
The Southern Ocean is the heart of the world's ocean.
Antarctica is probably the most pristine area in the whole world. It's also one of the least explored places on our planet. The problem with the way we think about our oceans is that for so much of human existence, we've imagined that the oceans were so vast that we could do anything and it would have no lasting impact. Now we know better, but the regulations haven't caught up yet.
One of the most important things about Antarctica in the face of climate crisis is that the poles act as reflectors, sending heat back into the atmosphere. If we are heating up that atmosphere and we're melting the ice cover at both poles, we lose that protection.
We were able to go much farther south into the Weddell Sea than really any of us imagined would be possible. It's a real wake-up call, going into the Weddell Sea and seeing no ice in any direction.
Antarctic is warming faster than anywhere else on Earth. Climate change has been melting the sea ice here in Antarctica very quickly.
There is less ice here right now than at any other time in recorded history.
Most people are very surprised to learn that there is so much life under the waters around Antarctica.
Sanctuaries are the best tool that we have to rebuild depleted populations, to protect biodiversity, and to give our oceans a fighting chance against the impacts of climate change and plastic pollution and industrial fishing.
We need to focus on conservation right now. Otherwise, we don't even know what we're losing.
The United Nations is negotiating a global ocean treaty, and if they get it right, it will enable us to scale up sanctuaries for the first time.
There exist 3 proposals for marine protected areas within the Southern Ocean. These proposals have been on the table for many, many years. We don't need any more science. What we need is public pressure to get them out of the political quagmire that they're in at the moment. The ocean around Antarctica is owned by no one, belongs to all of us. It is everybody's responsibility to do their part to make sure this pristine and beautiful rugged environment and all the life that lives here is protected. I want the world's leaders to feel personally the responsibility that lies on their shoulders.
If the oceans die, there's no hope for humanity.
We've run out of time for empty words and promises.
Welcome, John. It's great to have you back again, and thank you so much for the work you do.
Thank you, Jane. It is great to be back and really nice to see you looking so healthy.
Thank you. Thank you. So first, the 30 by 30 commitment at the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. Tell me, how did it happen and what does it mean? How does this global agreement position us going into the global oceans treaty negotiations?
I don't think we'll ever be fully satisfied with something that comes out of a big global gathering like this, but we were able to get all the governments in the world to agree that we need to protect 30% of our lands and waters by 2030. And that gives us a lot of momentum coming into this final round of negotiations for the Global Oceans Treaty. So it's a big deal, and it makes, I think, all of us feel a lot more optimistic about what we're going to be able to get out of this.
This is what the great biologist E.O. Wilson at Harvard, this is what he advocated before he passed, isn't it?
Absolutely. He wants more, and I think he's right. We want more too, but this is kind of an absolute minimum. We have to do this.
Yeah. And for those who are newer to this issue, can you give us a little background of what has led up to this moment?
Well, as is often the case, it starts with a wake-up call. I mean, essentially, we did an enormous amount of damage to our oceans. For most of human existence, we thought that they were so vast that we really couldn't have much of an impact, certainly not a lasting impact. But we came to realize through scientific research that, as you said, we've eaten something like 90% of the large fish. We've basically humans have been waging war against fish for a very long time. We're fishing in the Arctic, the Antarctic, the middle of the Pacific, the Atlantic, often down more than a mile deep, using fish finding equipment, essentially designed for military purposes. It really is like a war against fish, and there's no place left for them to hide. And so eventually it got so bad that we realized that we had to do something. And that led to finally the world's governments agreeing to begin negotiating a global ocean treaty. And this is one of those, once in a lifetime opportunities. I think that we, after years of up and down and delay and disappointment, we got very, very close late last year.
Right.
And now I think going into this, what should be the final round, I'm feeling pretty optimistic that we'll come out of this, not just with the treaty, but with a good one.
Let's work for that. If we're successful, John, in New York, what exactly would the world be agreeing to?
So essentially, this is about how we treat the half of the surface of the planet that is the high seas, areas beyond national jurisdiction, 200 miles offshore. And as it is now, it's pretty much the Wild West. Almost anything goes out there. There's very, very little regulation. There's this patchwork of regulatory regimes, something for the Western Pacific, something for the Indian Ocean, but they're not usually focused on protecting the ocean. They're much more about managing fisheries, and they take you in really different directions. And so we need to protect biodiversity. We need to protect our oceans. It's not just, catching the right amount of tuna so you can still catch tuna again the year after. It's how did you catch those tuna? What impact did it have on sharks and sea turtles and seabirds? Those kinds of things. So the big thing that this treaty should do is take it out of the hands of those organizations, but create a different body that has a broader mandate. And so we'll be able to say for the first time that we can actually create sanctuaries in the ocean that'll be off limits to extractive activity, especially fisheries. And that's critical because sanctuaries are the best tool that we have to protect biodiversity, to rebuild depleted populations, and to help increase the resilience of our ocean so they can survive things like climate change and plastic pollution and ocean acidification.
John, can you help us understand a little bit more about what this would mean for ocean life?
I think the one thing that is really hard for people to get their head around is just how big the ocean is. And still, we have animals like whales, like sea turtles, many seabirds that will cross entire oceans. Migrate from breeding grounds to feeding grounds, thousands of miles. And so to think about what it takes to prevent the extinction of endangered sea turtles or endangered whales, you really need to be talking about very large sanctuaries, and whole networks of sanctuaries that can protect these critical areas and give these animals a chance to survive. And this treaty can help us do that. It can also help ensure that we don't wipe out populations of fish that are critically important sources of food, especially for people on islands and coastal areas.
Yeah. Is it if it passes, please God, is it enforceable?
One thing that we have in our favor with the high seas, because we're talking about 200 miles offshore, it's a lot easier to manage than areas, right by the coast or right by big cities. So you can watch these boats go out and keep going out and farther out. So we can track it, monitor it, and enforce it a lot more easily than in coastal waters. Still a challenge, but I feel like this is the kind of treaty that people can count on us being able to enforce.
Yeah. What are the dirty industry tactics or I don't know, we call them loopholes that we need to look out for and fight against?
We just had there was just the State Department just led a stakeholder call to talk about the treaty. And, I was not surprised to see the tuna industry lobbyists show up. And they were really pushing, basically pushing for the status quo. Like, let's not get too carried away. And they were pushing the US government to not give in on things that we think are fundamental. Two of the big loopholes that I'm worried about. One is this treaty has to cover all of the high seas. You can't exclude areas that have some type of management because they have a different mandate. They don't cover everything that we need to focus on with this treaty. They're not going to protect the ocean. They're not going to protect biodiversity. So that's the first one. It has to cover all of the high seas. The second is that we have to be very careful about the ability that we give governments to opt out. So, for example, if this treaty leads to the creation of a new sanctuary in the Central Pacific, we can't allow a major fishing country to just say, well, okay, that's fine. We're happy that this is a sanctuary, but we're going to opt out. Our fleet is still going to fish there. Obviously, that is not going to work. So there are countries that are still pushing for that.
What can people who love oceans like I do to support and help push for a strong treaty?
This is the last, we're at the home stretch here. So first, absolutely, if you haven't already, sign our petition that will go to the Biden administration, urging them to fight for the strong treaty that we need. If you have signed it, share it with your friends. That would be really great. This is the last moment. Also, I don't think it's too late to ask your members of Congress to be contacting the White House, to be contacting the State Department and say, this is something you care about. This is something that you expect them to lead on.
Great. And I'm going to be talking more about the petition in a moment and let people know how they can sign that. I know that ultimately it's going to take a big systemic change to protect our oceans at the scale needed. But what would you say to folks out there who want to know what else they can do to help protect our oceans in their daily lives or local communities?
Yeah, well, first I'll start. I think we do need a real systemic change. And, with Greenpeace, I've traveled and visited, often underwater, most of the world's oceans at this point. And every time we see surprising things. We discover things that completely unexpected. And it's just such a powerful reminder of how little we actually know about our oceans. And this, we live on the water planet, so how little we know about our own home and how it works. And a lot of the damage that we've done, a lot of the risk going forward really stems from the fact that we put the burden of responsibility on environmentalists. So if we want to protect an area, we're talking about years and years of scientific research, years of public education, years of advocacy, and then still maybe we don't win. Maybe we don't get this area protected. Otherwise, industry gets to fish everywhere. And so we need to flip that around at some point. And hopefully this treaty starts to move us in that direction. But we have to start thinking about the oceans as worthy of protection. And if someone wants to go in and fish or mine or drill, they have to really make the good case for why they think they can do that without causing damage. But back to your question. I think there's a lot that each of us can do in our own lives. And definitely we need to be talking to our elected officials. We need to be talking to the corporations that are involved in making plastic packaging or selling seafood, for example. Individually, I think anything that we can do to reduce our carbon footprint has value. I was happy to be able to bike to the office today. Eating less meat is certainly useful. Plastic packaging is something I think that most of us are always already trying to reduce and eliminate as much as possible in our lives. The more that we can shift from single-use packaging to reusables, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah. And as consumers, of course, as I said earlier in the show, we have to stop eating big fish. We have to never eat shark fin soup. We have to complain to the grocery store, to the butchers, to the seafood counters. If we see, big fish being sold or octopus being sold, things like that, we have to complain about it and raise our voices as consumers. John, we have time for audience questions. So are you ready?
I'm ready. Bring it.
Maddie, would you give us some questions that have come from the audience?
Absolutely. We have so many good ones rolling in. So thank you so much to all of our viewers. So the first one is from Sarah on Facebook. And John, this question is for you. What is Greenpeace planning to do if or once the treaty is adopted?
Great question. So let's say once it happens, it's going to happen. We will be spending a lot of time at sea. I can't really share too much of the details yet, but Greenpeace has ships. We are heading out. We will be fighting for the network of sanctuaries that this treaty allows. And so we will be traveling around the world. We will be supporting scientists. We will be confronting industry. We will be raising awareness and calling for this treaty to actually be put to work.
Mm-hmm.
Exciting. All right. The next question is from Anna on Twitter. And she says, how much power does the UN really have? Once the treaty is adopted, is this actually going to be enforceable?
Good question. We touched on that a little bit. And, I think especially in America, people have a real skepticism of the UN. But if we get this treaty right, it will be pretty strong. We're going to be fighting right up until the end of it to make sure that there aren't big loopholes, to make sure that it is enforceable, to make sure that it applies to all of the high seas, and that every government in the world is going to fully engage.
Great. And this one is from Kayla on YouTube. John, do you think we'll ever actually be able to discover and see all of the beautiful parts of our oceans in this lifetime?
I hope that we get a chance to experience and study and share a lot more than we have. But the oceans are so vast. It's going to take completely new technology for us to be able to really see all of it. As it is now, there's almost nothing that can get us down to the deepest parts of the ocean. And all we've ever really done is just kind of drop down, look around, and come back up. So we have a long way to go before we'll be able to do that. But it is exciting. Every time, like I said, every time that I've gone down in the submarine with Greenpeace, we've seen things that we completely did not expect. In the Bering Sea off of Alaska, we discovered a giant skate nursery, and skates are relatives of sharks and rays, and they look almost like UFOs swimming along the bottom, feeding on shellfish. And it was this massive area, much bigger than a football field, full of skates and egg cases, which you might have seen on beaches. They're called mermaid horses. And the Amazon reef, when I went to grad school a long time ago, we were told that there were coral reefs north of the Amazon and south of the Amazon, but the Amazon River was a barrier, and so they're almost disconnected. But we went down and explored with the Brazilian scientists this reef, a very unique reef. It was actually underneath the plume of the Amazon. Really incredible stuff. In the Antarctic waters, you saw a glimpse of that in the video. You would imagine, I always imagine, in someplace that cold, that dark, usually covered by ice, how much life are you really going to find? I mean, there's not, most of our ecosystems are driven by sunlight at the beginning, and there's no sun getting down there. So, how interesting can it really be? But, we visited places where every single inch of the bottom of the Antarctic Ocean was covered with life. And I'm not even talking about plants. This is below where the sunlight can penetrate. So it's all animals, starfish and crabs and corals and sponges and lots of things that you've never heard of. Just amazing stuff. Every time. It's shocking.
I think it's Attenborough, one of those planet series that has one that's about the deepest part of the ocean. And I was just floored by what they saw. And all the fish that are transparent that you can see through and see their brains and their organs working, and fish that light up. And oh my God, we have to be humble before all the things that we don't know yet about our oceans.
You're absolutely right. And those bioluminescent creatures are some of my favorite things to see. Flashing and pulsing and all the colors of the rainbow. One of our team called them disco jellies.
I loved how James Cameron translated what he saw in the deepest of the deep seas into his movie Avatar. I thought it was pretty cool. We should enlist James Cameron in this effort to save the oceans. So listen, John, the treaty sounds like it's going to make a huge difference, and we absolutely have to get it passed. What else do you think we need to do? Anything else?
So many things, but this will be a great start. As soon as we are finished with this, we'll definitely be working on actually using it to create a network of sanctuaries, and we'll need everyone's help for that. The UN has also just begun negotiating a global plastic treaty, and they've set a goal to finish this by the end of next year. So they're trying to do this much quicker than they did the Global Ocean Treaty.
I didn't understand what you said. They're working on what kind of a treaty?
They're working on negotiating a new global plastic treaty. So
Plastics treaty. Oh,
with plastic pollution. And at this point, everything is on the table. There's a lot to fight for. It could, if we get this right, it will phase out plastic production, which should have huge benefits for the climate. If we get this right, we will just eliminate a lot of types and uses of plastic, especially single-use plastic.
wow.
We want to phase out as quickly as possible a lot of the dangerous chemical additives that are commonly used in plastic packaging. And we absolutely have to make sure that this treaty really starts to deal with the institutional racism in plastic production and plastic disposal. And so we have to tackle the environmental justice aspects of plastic. So I'm excited about it. We have governments that are really ready to work with us on this. At the moment, I would say the US is not where it needs to be. In fact, in the first round of negotiations, probably our biggest takeaway was how much work we need to do on the United States. Because they started out sounding a lot like Saudi Arabia, which is obviously not where they need to be.
Now, firefighters, do you hear that? There's a lot for us to do, and there's a lot to be hopeful for. And so stay tuned, because we're going to get into this fight in a big way. Great.
Sure.
Thank you so much for joining me once again to keep us firefighters on the cutting edge of what's happening in the fight to protect our oceans. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you, Jane, for everything you do.
You know the drill, firefighters. To make change, we got to take action. And right now we can do that by going to firedrillfridays.com/takeaction and tell Biden, tell his administration to champion a strong global oceans treaty. Please, please do this. Once you add your name, share it. Share it with your friends and families and on social media. You know, people talking to people is how we make change. And people are much more likely to take action when someone they know asks them to. Okay. Be sure to also follow the Fire Drill Fridays on Facebook and Instagram for updates from me from New York, where I'll be holding our leaders accountable to protect our beloved ocean. Finally, don't forget to RSVP for our next Fire Drill Fridays live stream show, which will be March 3rd. And as I've shared before, Fire Drill Fridays is headed in person to the front lines of the climate crisis, starting in the Gulf, which is Louisiana and Texas, to stand shoulder to shoulder with communities who are fighting back against big oil and gas. That is ground zero for the climate crisis, and I'm really excited to be going down there. On the next live stream show, we're going to hear about why this region is so important to the climate movement and how it's home to the biggest climate bomb in the United States. Plus, you'll get to hear a lot more on where we're going and what we're doing, and now you can follow along and how you can follow along and take action for our climate together. Tune in on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or firedrillfridays.com at 11 p.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time on March 3rd to find out more. And until then, firefighters, I hope you and your families are well. Stay safe. See you next time.